Well, I don't have to look at you guys. So, and nothing against you guys, but I think it's just easier if you look at me and I can hear you, and you can
Oh, there
ask
we
me
go.
questions. Um, I'm going to record this, so you know. So we'll have this for later if people miss it. Um, this is Interactive Multimedia. I should mention we have Garrett, who's under Garrett, and we have Kevin, who's under Zero. They are tutors. Uh,
Hello.
yes, saying hi. They are tutors who are available to help you for any problems you might have. So you'll see them online. You can contact them. Plus, you can contact me, of course. Um, you should probably mute yourself if you're not talking. But if you need to talk, you can ask questions anytime you want. That's all cool. And we'll talk today about what we're going to do in interactive multimedia, what you're going to do, and how we're going to do it. Which hopefully you've already downloaded and installed Google Web Designer. We'll take a little quick look at that too and get you going on your first assignment. So you know your first assignment is going to be you're going to make an online portfolio of your work. You need to take at least 10 pieces of original artwork of yours, and we're going to make a web page and we're going to host it. We're going to host it for free off of a Google thing called Firebase. But I'm going to show you that whole process. So you know, this class used to be called the web class. Let's go to it over here. I'm sorry. It used to be called the Flash class. That's because it used to teach Flash. As probably a lot of you know, Flash is going away. It's basically almost gone away because it became too much of a security problem. It was known as interactive multimedia because Flash was the first thing online that allowed you to play games and play videos and things like this. It was owned by a company called Macromedia, and then it was bought by Adobe. The reason they're shutting it down is that it became a security nightmare. Flash was basically what they call a virtual machine. So Adobe had to write these machines which were closed source, meaning nobody knew what was happening in them. So what happened is you wrote this code, it got thrown to Adobe's machine, then it made videos or games or whatever. If you remember your stuff on Newgrounds, that's what it did. The problem with that was if someone found a security problem and broke it, Adobe would have to fix it. And Adobe didn't have people everywhere to do that. So it eventually became a security nightmare where people could break into it and do awful things to your computer. And people still wanted to do what Flash did. They wanted to have games, they wanted to have music, they wanted to have videos. So they came up with something else, which we're actually looking at right now online here. The thing that replaced Flash is called HTML5 plus CSS2 plus JavaScript. And what those are what make modern web pages. The first thing we're going to start with is HTML. HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language, which might not mean anything to you. And that's okay. Although someone needs to shut off their or mute themselves. I'm getting crazy feedback. Let me see where that is. Okay. HTML, Hypertext Markup Language. I'm going to show you some of it. If we go here, we go to Developer Tools, and we go to Source. Oh, come on, show me the page, will you? We will momentarily see this. Come on. There we go. That is HTML. And actually, you see it. The first thing it says in that page, doc type HTML. I'm going to start, and this is going to be very basic, just to give you an idea of it, and then we're going to get into what we do with it. A markup language is a computer language, generally one designed to describe a page. So we're using a markup language to make this page. Hypertext. The hyper is the interesting part of that. If any of you remember Star Trek or even new Star Trek, they jump into hyperspace, which gets them somewhere very far away. By they can be in one place and then they can be in some other place entirely by just going through this thing. A lot of the people who started the internet were Star Trek fans. So what hypertext is a piece of text like that over there that you click on and then you go somewhere else. You know what? Let me close this. So if I go here and I go like that, I'm magically somewhere else. That is hypertext. Now, that might not sound so remarkable to you. It was remarkable at the time. The time it was first envisioned was the early 1970s, just around when the original Star Trek was on. Now, they did not have web pages then. They did not have a World Wide Web either. But they had this idea, what if you could have a book and you could click a word in the book and then you could magically go somewhere else, hyperleap somewhere else. But we were still a good 20 years away from what we see over here to make that happen. Let's go forward a bit. The World Wide Web is invented. The web browser has not been invented yet, though. The World Wide Web is just a series of connecting computers from one to another over long distances. And before the World Wide Web, they had something called Gopher. That's a picture of Gopher. And I remember Gopher. Gopher was menus. This is before computers could show images well. So what Gopher consisted of is you'd have a menu like this over here, and you click something, and then that menu might take you to a machine in Indiana. That was the idea of the Gopher hole. And that machine in Indiana might take you to their history department. And then their history department might take you to a download of a picture of a, mummy, something like that. And the idea of the Gopher was that you could jump around from different places on the internet, but it was all text-based and menu-based and wasn't very easy to use. So someone at CERN, the big accelerator where they smash particles against each other, came up with another idea, which was the World Wide Web, which we were already talking about, but the web browser, the hypertext markup language, HTML, to create something called a web browser. I forget the name of that, but the first popular web browser was this thing called Mosaic. Mosaic was made for free. And we're still talking at a time when people were dialing up on phones, but Mosaic allowed you to do roughly what we're doing here. It allowed you to look at a page. It allowed you to click on words and go to other places. It allowed you to click on pictures and go to other places, but didn't allow anything else. And because everybody was on phones, it was super slow. Downloading an image might take an hour. Downloading a song might take a day. That wasn't unusual. So nobody was talking about interactivity at the time. This is when Flash steps into the game. Flash was supposed to be a way of people figuring out how to do stuff in theaters, which is an old weird history thing about it. But because of that, they used vector shapes. A vector shape is basically just like a description of an outline. Now, what this meant, which was good for the internet at the time, was if I had two vector shapes, like a dog and a cat, and I moved them around, when that played on your computer, I didn't have to download it image by image. I just downloaded the vector shape, the other vector shape, then told your computer to figure it out. So the first animations you could see pretty well were Flash animations. They might take an hour to download, but then they would play at speed. So people were very excited by this. People made Flash intros to every web page imaginable. They made Flash games. They made Flash everything. People loved Flash. There was a time in the mid-1990s, if you just said you knew Flash, you could get a job for $50,000 anywhere. It was a very odd time, actually. And then, in 2001, the internet crashed because they realized you don't need 20 Flash programmers to make a web page. You really need one, and you need them for like 10 hours, and then that's that. And all these Flash animators were unemployed, loads of them. Interestingly, that's when cartoons started using Flash, and they started using it because all these people already knew how to do it and didn't have jobs. Now, meanwhile, we're getting into those Flash problems. Security problems, people are crashing through it, Adobe doesn't like taking care of it. So the whole internet, which had web browsers at this point, had HTML, said, we want an open source way of doing what Flash did, meaning we want the code to it to be available to everybody. We want to have standards to say this is what we're going to use, and we want that to be open so that if there's any problem, anybody can fix it. And they came up with what they call HTML5, which, as we mentioned before, Google Web Designer is written in to give you an idea of how powerful it is. You see, create engaging, interactive HTML5 based designs and motion graphics that can run on any device. The any device is important too. One of the big advantages of using HTML5 and CSS2 and JavaScript is that it runs in a web browser. It runs in any web browser. If a web browser is well written, you could run it on a phone or a tablet or a television or a billboard. I don't know if anyone saw this recently, but someone ran Doom on a pregnancy test. It was not great to play it, but it was possible. If you can get stuff into HTML5, you can put it anywhere. It's secure, it's open source, it's free. So if you can do your interactive stuff in HTML5, the world is your oyster. Now, I showed you before, when I click over here, because this is Chrome, which we're familiar with. Chrome's a web browser that reads HTML5, and because of that, it's also a place people can develop HTML5. This, under Developer Tools, gives me information on what that page is, and this is the actual code that's creating this page. Now you'll note the very first line, doc type HTML, and it has those brackets. I'm going to make just a small reference to this. This is a weird idea. This page is HTML5, but there's another language above it called XML, which stands for Extensible Markup Language. It's another markup language. XML is a meta language that is designed to subsume every other language. So everything can be written in XML. Now, that sounds very broad, I know, and it is very broad. But one of the reasons this is true is XML is very simple. XML is basically these two brackets. And what happens in XML is I have a bracket like that and a bracket like this, and then I say what's happening next. And then when I'm done, down here, I put another bracket, and I put a slash with that again to say I'm finished with it. Sometimes you see people put /s for the end of sarcasm. That's basically from it. Now, the reason I'm telling you this, the first line of every HTML5 page is declaring that it's HTML. So it starts as XML and says, oh, this is a document type that's HTML. So now I know, and the computer knows, everything after that is going to be HTML. If we look a little bit further, it's telling me it's in English, and then it has a head. And remember I was saying there's the bracket, head, and then slash head at the end. If you notice here, it's showing me head, and then stuff in between it, and then slash head. If I open this, there's a lot more in there. The way every HTML5 web page works, there's a header, which is in head, which does all the stuff on the page. Then there's the body, which is the actual page. Then there's actually a, what's it called? I don't want to say it's a tail. Maybe it's called a tail. I forget. Nobody ever uses it anyway. There's a thing at the end that says we're done. But basically, this header has all the code, and well, I'll show it to you. Let me click that open quick. So it's telling me styles. It's telling me the title. See, title, and then slash backward, no more title. Scripts. Here's some JavaScript. This JavaScript, which is a programming language, which we will look at in the latter half of the semester, it won't be that bad. You'll get over it. You'll see some code. Maybe you'll like it. If you like it, you could have a job almost anywhere. But we'll look at a little bit of code. Those JavaScript programs basically make the page, and there should be some CSS2 in here, although maybe they're putting it in the Java. Nope, there it is. Static CSS index. There's a style sheet. So the header opens, they mention some things, they put the code in, the JavaScript, they put the CSS. CSS, we'll talk a little bit about that too. That actually organizes the page, and then they launch the page, which is down here. Body, main, so on and so forth. Now, you could type this. You could sit there and type it all in. That's very difficult. So you don't have to. We have things like Web Designer. I'm going to open Web Designer, which I probably have over here somewhere. Web Designer, Google Web Designer, Google. There it is, Google Web Designer. Google Web Designer not only works in HTML5, Google Web Designer was written in HTML5. Now, what that means is you can actually add things to it if you know HTML5. It also means it runs on anything, since it basically is a web page. By the way, and I find this kind of fascinating, you know we're in Discord, and you probably all know Discord. Here's Discord. This will get a little meta because you'll see me there. I believe Discord is a web browser because when I'm in it, if I hit the right button, it should show me the actual code that makes the page. But I'll get back to that because it's clearly not happening now. We'll cross that later. Let's look at Google Web Designer, because this is where you're going to make your interactive web page with 10 pieces of your artwork. You can work on the artwork when you get to it. For now, I'm going to want you to make a page, play around with it to get the way things work, and then figure out how we're going to put stuff into it. Next week, we're going to talk about what type of stuff you're going to put into it. So I'm going to say create a new file. I have to put it in a directory. I'm going to call this test web designer. It's in documents. That's good. I want to make sure that it's HTML with pages. Animation mode advanced, and I'll call this first web page. Now when I do this, it's going to open up something that looks a lot like an Adobe app. You know what? Maybe I'll move myself here. Let me go over here, and let me just put myself down there. Gets me out of the way a little bit. Lock that back like that. Okay, so this should look like an Adobe app. It should look a lot like After Effects. If you know After Effects, you already know a lot about how to use this. This is my web page. You'll notice it actually has things like divs in it, which is what the other stuff was. Over here, we don't have to worry about this so much right now, so I'm going to ignore that right now. Down here, we have an important thing. This is a timeline. This is how different things happen. And over here, we should have, open up, different things we can do on this page. There's not a lot since this is the basic top of the page. I should be able to do things like change a background color. Let me see about that. You know what? Let me close that. Let me make sure I'm in my page one. Good. No, I made an extra page. I didn't want to do that. Let's stay with this page here. I'm going to, I suspect that my setup, oh, there we go. That just went to code view. Is not, here we go, properties. That's what I was looking for. The properties tell me what's on this page. Width and height. I want a bigger width, actually. I'm going to make this the same size as the thing we're recording and looking at, which I happen to know is 1920 by 1080. which we will eventually get it to do. Good. By 1080. That gives me more room to work. I can probably zoom that out a little bit here too, so I can see more what's going on in it. Okay, good. Now I have something I can work with. What else do we have on here that we can change? The fill, here's where I can change the color. I'll decide I want to start with a red page, or maybe even a blue page. Why not? Okay. Now what are we doing here? Let's add something to it. I'm going to pick this tool over here. This is a toolbar like in Photoshop or what have you. Rectangle mask. I'm going to go out here, and it should let me make a rectangle. Erg. Let's try this again. I'm going to click there. Ah, there's more like it. Rectangle tool. That's more like it. So I just made a rectangle. What you might notice down here is I got a line that says rectangle. I also have properties on that rectangle. Where this says use percentages, I'm going to click yes, so that now it's percentages of where the thing's located. Now I can animate that. I'm going to go here, and I'm going to take it, and we're going to say it's going to start here, and then I'm going to move down my timeline. I'll move to 1 second, and I'll say it goes here. Oh, you know what? I'm forgetting something. Oh, I have to add a keyframe. My mistake. Let's start up here. I'm going to right mouse. I'm going to insert a keyframe. You know what? Let's go forward one. Fine. We'll go there. Now insert my keyframe. Good. Then I'm going to go out here to 1.5 seconds. I'll move it to there. Good. And I go to 3 seconds. And I'll move it to here. And now, when I slide backwards, it should be doing that. If I hit play, it should be doing that, taking 3 seconds, which is a real long time to do that, frankly. Can I modify these curves? Oh, I can add more keyframes to it by being in other places. The only thing I had to do to set up for the animation is I have to make sure that it has a keyframe, and we should discuss keyframing if you're not familiar with it. Keyframing is an old animation technique. Every good animation program I know of works with keyframes. And the way they work is you have a timeline here, which is, this is seconds. And basically a keyframe is, I say, on the first frame, I want to be down here. Look, I don't like, you know, let's go back there. Good. And on, you see I can pull these frames around a little bit. On this frame, I want to be here. And the computer figures out what goes in between them. Like that. Now, I can modify them on the fly. Like I can go here and say, I don't like that one. I think if I right mouse click near it, I can remove that one. And it goes back to a straight line like that. You'll notice it says linear next to them. We'll talk about linear later probably. For right now, we should see that I'm moving them this way. Now, something else you might notice over here in your properties, it's showing me the pixel changes like that. It also has rotations, and it also has scales. So let's say I go here, and I'm going to rotate on my Z, and I'm just grabbing it like that. So that's negative 40 degrees. And by the time it gets here, we'll have it go like that. So now we have it doing that, and by the time it goes here, I'll have it do a full revolution like that. Let's see how quickly it does that. Oh, it does the spin all at the end. You know what? We'll spin it backwards like that. Now, this is sort of like After Effects. You're familiar with After Effects. But there's a big difference. I'm going to go preview, and Chrome is good, and I'm going to click this, and it's going to open a web page. and it's going to animate. I can reload that web page. This is what I just made. I just made an HTML5 web page, which I can use over and over and over again if I want. To get even weirder about this, if I want to save this, File, Save As. We're in this directory, Documents, Test Web Designer. We're going to call this Test Web Designer 2. It saves as a web page. Let me show it to you. We got to go into our documents. You know what? I should have looked more closely. Oh, there it is, Test Web Designer. Look at that. I have 2 web pages in there. I'm going to click this web page, and what it's going to do is it's going to open a freaking web page. That's what it is. I'm sorry, I should put it over here. That is what I just wrote. This is the earlier one, which clearly isn't doing anything for me. So let's use the other one, which clearly is doing something for me. If I go here, I'm going to go down to More Tools. I'm going to go down to Developer Tools. This is the code I wrote. Starts with our brackets, says it's HTML, says HTML again. It's got a header. The header says the title is first web page. That is what I called it, remember? It's got some meta stuff. It says Google Web Designer made it. Some CSS, some more CSS, which we'll talk about later. And then it has a bunch of JavaScript, which is where it actually does the animation. Bunch more CSS, which we'll talk about later. And then there's the actual page. So I saved you all the trouble of writing that. Well, I mean, Google did, whoever did. So you know, there's a lot of courses in HTML where they make you write this by hand. So you don't have to do that, which is great. But you do, and let's go back to Google Web Designer. You do have to work with making web pages. There they are. And let's zoom this back out. And try to play around with different layers. We just put a rectangle in there, right? Let's see what else we got. Just like in Adobe Land, wherever you see that little arrow thing, there's more stuff there. Text. Let's try a text tool. We're going to put, I'll put my name in there, which is really tiny. Probably because I haven't set the size of that font yet. Yeah.
Right up there next to where it says right above.
Where you're thinking there?
No. Well, not there exactly. Well, actually, I think it is. Yeah, but I was right at the upward tab, like literally below the file head. You know?
Oh, over here. The other pages. You're right. Oh, I see what you're saying. Yes, good point. Actually, excellent point. And not to make excuses for myself, but, well, I'm going to make an excuse for myself. The reason I didn't know that's there is I think they just added that. And it's funny because it's the way Photoshop does it.
Yeah.
Google, one of the reasons Google made this, by the way, is Google was one of the big companies behind making HTML5. And then nobody could do it. And Google makes all their money on advertising. So they needed a tool to help people make ads. And that's what Google Web Designer is. They decided that Adobe didn't really have anything, so they went this way.
Yeah, it also has to do with the fact that it's pretty much, like, you can tell this is all influenced by Adobe.
Oh, yeah, no, that's a very good point. It really is because Adobe's the standard, so they copy it. Though the funny thing about this, well, one of the funny things about this is entirely written in HTML5. And that means it runs in Linux, it runs on Windows, it runs on Mac, it could run on a phone, it could run on a tablet, it could run on anything, which is one of the advantages. I've said this before, I think. I am pretty certain within the next 2 years, I'm going to be teaching entirely out of a web browser. Because everybody wants to move their software into a web browser because, well, you don't have tech problems then, right? If your web browser works, your problems are solved. one of the reasons Adobe went subscription is so that they could avoid people calling them up about different versions. So everybody has the same version now. And when they update it, they just push a button, the whole world changes. All these companies, Microsoft and Adobe and you name it, they saw Google, and they saw Google could like update all of Google and nobody even knew. And they were jealous. They were like, man, I'd like to do that rather than sending out DVDs and then having people call in and say, my machine doesn't work and my machine doesn't work and da 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 da. So all of these companies are trying to go towards a subscription model and serving it through a web browser, because then it's the web browser's problem. Like even within this case, it's Google's program and Google's web browser, Chrome. So if there's a problem, Google's got to deal with it.
Sounds almost like they sounds almost as if they have artificial intelligence just set up to pretty much do that work in a way.
Well, it's funny you bring that up because that's a whole other that's another advantage they get, because when you put everything into the browser, that means that they have to handle the servers, but they also get the advantage. I'm working right now on getting our students Adobe licenses, and so you know, we're working on it. We're not there yet, but we may be there very soon. But one of the reasons Adobe wants you in that license model is because hey, you know how they have that new feature to like you press character and it can cut a character out of an image? That's all artificial intelligence based on what's in their cloud. When you upload images to Adobe's cloud, they examine the images and they compare them for like where characters look and how people's hair looks and shirts and things, so that that algorithm gets smarter and smarter. And then they can put it back into the software, so when you push, you know, select character, it has a bigger pool of stuff to collect from. Apple is doing this, Google is doing this, Amazon is doing this, Netflix is doing this. They're recognizing if your stuff is in the cloud, they can use all that cloud data for their artificial intelligence algorithms to then go back into the software. You know who else is doing it? NVIDIA. NVIDIA has algorithms that improve on the fly based on people playing games on NVIDIA cards and then looking at what data is coming from that. They have smoothing algorithms. Likewise, you saw how when I opened this, it said it updated. This updates on its own these days. And by the way, I didn't do it yet, but you can sign in, and you should sign in because you can save your stuff. I'm going to use my, I'll use my Bergen because you guys all have Bergen Google accounts now, by the way, which have unlimited Google Drive storage. Think about that. It's a very good thing.
Isn't it really like $1 to get 100 gigabytes of space with Drive?
It is, but you don't have to spend that dollar if you don't want to. And you could store 50 gigabytes of stuff in our cloud. Well, our cloud, in Google's cloud, and they won't charge you anything. It's a very good thing to have, though one of the reasons they're doing it is so they can use that data. I have one of those Google phones that has unlimited photo uploads. It's the same thing. The reason they want that is so they can use those photos to examine them to increase their artificial intelligence algorithms. So, to get back here, and you see now I'm logged in here as me at Bergen, whatever, and there's some things in here about publishing, but we'll get to those later. For now, I want you to, and I didn't do anything with this Francis yet. Let me do something quickly with that, and then I want you to play with this. Let's change our font here. This is an interesting thing. When I say more fonts, Google has thousands of fonts available for free. But you have to download them. Like you have to download the connection to them. They did this because there's a big problem with font permissions online. So both Google and Adobe have made huge collections of web fonts available. I'm going to take a Yanoni Capasats and hit OK. And now I'm in that font. And we'll change our color. We'll make it green. like that. Okay, and actually, let me shrink this down a little bit, and I'll shrink this window up. Can I shrink this window up? Yeah. Okay, now this, I can also keyframe. Let me go back over here. Starts on that, I like that. I'm going to put a keyframe on this Francis layer. We'll go, you know what, we'll go here. And I'm going to right mouse click there, insert a keyframe. I'll go up to here and let's move it like that. And now it's doing that, and I can make it follow it. I'll make it follow it on a different path to there. And you know what? Let's make it grow. This is scaling. I'm going to lock all my scaling. So by here we'll have it get as big as that. Good. Now it starts small, and we'll have it do a 360 rotation. If you have questions, do ask. You know what? Let's do it on the Y. Oh yeah, I like that. I'm not going to regret that too much.
Francis, you're breaking up. It seems like there's a glitch.
Oh, is there? You know what? I might be demanding too much on this.
Yeah,
Let's try this, folks. Work on this. Make sure you've downloaded Google Web Designer. Try to animate anything in it. Try to preview it. And then think of, there's my preview. Think of what pieces of artwork you're going to put in here to make your web pages, okay? I'm going to call that it for now. And again, we'll be here. You can ask us questions. Let me step off here. Good. Okay.